Captain Jake Morrison stood at the bridge window of the horizon's edge, watching the massive structure of Kepler Station grow larger as they approached. The diplomatic hub was enormous, bigger than any city on Earth. 12 different alien species had built their sections of the station, creating a patchwork of strange architecture that stretched for miles in every direction. "Captain, we're receiving docking instructions from Station Control," reported Lieutenant Ben Parker from the communications console. His voice carried a slight tremor that Jake pretended not to notice. Everyone on the crew was nervous. This was humanity's first real chance to join the galactic community. "Take us in slowly, Ben. Let's not give them any reason to think we're aggressive." Jake turned to face his bridge crew. Dr. Lisa Warren sat at the science station, reviewing her notes on alien biology for the 100th time. Commander Alex Turner stood near the tactical display, his military bearing rigid with tension. They had trained for this moment for 3 years, but nothing could really prepare them for what lay ahead. The ship shuddered slightly as they entered the station's docking bay. Through the viewports, Jake could see alien workers moving around the landing area. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, but others moved in ways that made his eyes hurt to follow. A creature that looked like a giant spider directed traffic with gestures from 6 different arms. Another being floated through the air without any visible means of support. "Docking complete, Captain," announced Ensign Kate Brown from the helm. "All systems secure?" Jake took a deep breath. "All right, people. This is it. We're representing all of humanity today. The Coalition Council will be watching everything we do and say, 'Dr. Warren, you'll be our primary science liaison. Commander Turner, you'll handle any security concerns. I'll lead the diplomatic talks.'" Lisa Warren stood up, smoothing down her uniform. She was young for such an important mission, only 32, but she was the best xenobiologist Earth had to offer. "Captain, I've reviewed all the cultural files we have on the Coalition species. The Veltar value logic above all else. The Zephyrians consider themselves the greatest artists in the galaxy. The Aquarii are telepathic and can sense emotions. We need to be very careful about how we present ourselves." Alex Turner nodded grimly. He was older than the others, a veteran of Earth's last war. "The intelligence reports say some of these species see humans as primitive. The Krogan think we're too violent. The Etherians believe we have no spiritual development. We're going to have to prove them wrong." Jake walked toward the airlock. "Remember, we're not just asking to join their club. We're asking them to trust US with the location of their homeworlds, their technology, their secrets. They have every right to be suspicious." The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss. The air that flowed in smelled strange, full of scents Jake couldn't identify. It was breathable, but it felt different in his lungs. Heavy somehow. Their escort was waiting for them in the corridor beyond. It was a Veltar, one of the logical species Lisa had mentioned. The creature stood 7 feet tall on thin legs, with 4 arms and a head that looked too large for its body. Its skin was pale blue and seemed to shimmer in the artificial light. "I am Sub-Ambassador Kreloth," the alien said in perfect English, though its voice had a strange musical quality. "I will escort you to the council chambers. Please follow me and do not deviate from the designated path." They walked through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. Jake had studied the station's layout, but seeing it in person was different. Each section they passed through had been built by a different species, and the architecture changed dramatically every few hundred meters. They walked through areas with ceilings so high they disappeared into darkness, then through tunnels barely wide enough for 2 people to pass. Other aliens moved through the corridors around them. Jake tried not to stare, but it was impossible not to be fascinated. A group of beings that looked like walking crystals chimed softly as they passed. Creatures with too many eyes watched the human delegation with obvious interest. Something that might have been a living cloud of gas drifted past, leaving a trail of sweet-smelling vapor. The Council has been debating humanity's application for 6 months, Kraloth said without turning around. There is significant opposition to your inclusion. Lisa Warren caught up to walk beside the alien. May I ask what their specific concerns are? Your species has a history of violence. You have wars constantly. You destroy your own environment. Many council members believe you are not ready for galactic citizenship. The Veltar's voice remained perfectly neutral, as if it was discussing the weather. Alex Turner's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice steady. Humanity has made great progress in recent decades. We've ended most conflicts on Earth. We're working to repair environmental damage. Perhaps, Kraloth replied, but the Council requires proof, not promises. They entered a vast chamber that took Jake's breath away. The ceiling stretched up so far, it was lost in shadows. Balconies and platforms at different levels held representatives from the 12 coalition species. The architecture was clearly designed to accommodate beings of vastly different sizes and needs. Some delegates sat in chairs, others floated in bubbles of liquid, and a few seemed to exist as pure energy. Contained in crystalline structures. At the center of the chamber was a circular platform where Jake and his team were directed to stand. The moment they took their positions, the vast space fell silent. Hundreds of alien eyes, sensors, and other sensory organs focused on the 3 humans. A voice boomed from speakers around the chamber, translating simultaneously into dozens of languages. The Coalition Council recognizes the delegation from the planet Earth, representing the species known as humans. State your petition. Jake stepped forward, his voice carrying clearly in the huge space. Honored members of the Coalition, humanity comes before you seeking membership in your alliance. We offer our knowledge, our resources, and our commitment to peace among the stars. A ripple of sound moved through the chamber. It might have been laughter, though Jake couldn't be sure. One of the floating delegates, a Zephyrian with gossamer wings and skin that shifted colors, spoke in a voice like singing. What can your primitive species possibly offer us? You have barely learned to leave your home planet. Your art is crude, your science is basic, and your philosophy is shallow. Another delegate, this one from the crystalline Etherian species, added its opinion in tones like breaking glass. Humans are spiritually empty. They worship false gods and material possessions. They have no understanding of the deeper mysteries of existence. Jake felt his heart sink as more delegates voiced their objections. The Krogan representative, a massive creature covered in what looked like natural armor, growled about human violence. The telepathic Aquari spoke of the chaotic, undisciplined nature of human thoughts. For 2 hours, the criticism continued. Every aspect of human civilization was found wanting. Jake, Lisa, and Alex answered as best they could, but it was clear they were fighting a losing battle. The Coalition had already made up its mind about humanity. Finally, the session was called to recess. As the delegates dispersed to their various quarters, Jake stood on the empty platform feeling defeated. Humanity's dream of joining the galactic community seemed to be slipping away. Don't give up yet, Captain, Lisa Warren said quietly. We still have time to change their minds. But Jake wasn't sure how they could possibly overcome centuries of prejudice in just a few days. Captain Jake Morrison walked slowly through the quiet corridors of Kepler Station's civilian quarters. The recess had been called 3 hours ago, but he couldn't bring himself to return to his ship. The weight of failure sat heavy on his shoulders. Every word from the Coalition delegates echoed in his mind. Primitive, violent, spiritually empty, worthless. The civilian section was different from the formal diplomatic areas. Here, families of the various species lived while their representatives conducted business. Children played in common areas while their parents worked. The lighting was softer here, warmer somehow. It reminded Jake of the residential districts back on Earth. He turned a corner and nearly stumbled over a small figure sitting cross-legged on the floor. It was a human child, maybe 3 years old, with dark hair and bright brown eyes. The boy looked up at Jake with the fearless curiosity that only very young children possessed. "Hello," the child said simply. "Are you sad?" Jake stopped walking. Of all the questions he had expected during this mission, that wasn't one of them. "I'm Captain Morrison. What's your name?" "Danny," the boy replied, scrambling to his feet. He was wearing a small jumpsuit in Earthfleet colors, obviously made to match the adult uniforms. "My mom works on your ship. She fixes things." Jake smiled for the first time in hours. "Your mom must be Amy Chun, our chief engineer." "She's very good at fixing things." Danny nodded seriously. "She's fixing the big machine that makes the ship go fast. But she said I had to stay here because the engine room is too loud for little ears." He cupped his hands over his ears to demonstrate. "That's probably a good idea," Jake agreed. He looked around the empty corridor. "Where is everyone else?" "The other kids went to see the pretty flying people," Danny said, referring to what must have been the Zephyrians. "But I wanted to stay here. It's quieter." He tilted his head, studying Jake's face. "You look really sad. Did someone say mean words to you?" Jake knelt down to be at eye level with the child. There was something about Danny's innocent concern that made the harsh words from the council chamber seem less important. Some people said some things that weren't very nice about humans. About all of us. Danny's face scrunched up in confusion. "That's not fair. Humans are good. My mom says humans are the best at helping each other and making beautiful things." "What kind of beautiful things?" Jake asked, genuinely curious about what a 3-year-old would consider beautiful. "Songs," Danny said without hesitation. "Mom sings to me every night. And there's this really pretty song that makes me feel better when I'm scared or sad." He looked at Jake thoughtfully. "Do you know Amazing Grace?" Jake blinked in surprise. Amazing Grace was one of the oldest songs he knew, passed down through generations of his family. His grandmother had sung it to him when he was Danny's age. "Yes, I know that song. How do you know it?" Danny brightened immediately. "My grandma taught it to my mom, and my mom taught it to me. She says it's a very old song that helps people feel better. Do you want to hear it?" Before Jake could answer, Danny began to sing. His voice was high and pure, the way only a child's voice could be. He sang slowly, carefully pronouncing each word as if it was precious. "Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me." Jake felt something tight in his chest loosen as he listened. The child's voice echoed softly off the metal walls of the corridor. There was no self-consciousness in Danny's singing, no awareness that anyone might be listening. He sang simply because the song made him happy. "I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see." Without thinking, Jake found himself humming along. Then, quietly, he began to sing the harmony. His deeper voice blended with Danny's, creating something that was more than the sum of its parts. Danny's face lit up with joy when he heard Jake joining in. He didn't stop singing, but his smile grew wider. Together, they continued the ancient hymn, their voices filling the empty corridor with something that felt like hope. "'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved." Jake had sung this song hundreds of times in his life, but never quite like this. There was something about sharing it with a child, about hearing it through young ears, that made it feel new again. The melody seemed to carry all the weight of human history, all the struggles and triumphs of his species. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. As they sang, Jake became aware of movement in his peripheral vision. He glanced up to see that they were no longer alone. A Veltar had stopped at the end of the corridor, its large head tilted in what might have been curiosity. The alien stood perfectly still, listening. Danny either didn't notice their audience or didn't care. He continued singing, his voice growing stronger and more confident with each verse. Jake kept singing too, not wanting to break the spell that seemed to have settled over the corridor. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. More. Figures appeared. A group of Zephyrians floated near the ceiling, their gossamer wings barely moving as they hovered. An Aquari delegate had emerged from a nearby doorway, its large eyes focused intently on the singing humans. Even one of the imposing Krogan had stopped its patrol to listen. "'Tis grace has brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home." Jake felt a strange mix of emotions as he realized they had attracted an audience. Part of him wanted to stop, to feel embarrassed about this impromptu performance. But Danny's pure joy in the song was infectious. The child sang as if this was the most natural thing in the world, as if sharing music was simply what humans did. "When we've been there 10,000 years, bright, shining as the sun," the aliens watched in silence. Jake couldn't read their expressions, couldn't tell what they were thinking, but they were listening. For the first time since arriving at the station, the aliens were truly paying attention to something human. "We've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun." As the last note faded away, Danny clapped his hands together with delight. "That was really good," he announced. "You sing nice, Captain Jake. Do you know any other songs?" Jake looked around at their audience of alien delegates. They remained perfectly still, as if they were afraid that any movement might break whatever had just happened. The Veltar's head was still tilted, its large eyes focused on Danny with an intensity that seemed almost reverent. "That was beautiful, Danny," Jake said softly. "Where did you learn to sing like that?" Danny shrugged, as if the question didn't make much sense. "I just sing. Mom says all humans can sing if they want to. She says it's one of the things that makes us special." Jake stood up slowly, still aware of the alien observers. A 3-year-old child had just done something that hours of diplomatic negotiation had failed to accomplish. He had made the aliens stop and truly listen to humanity. "Danny," Jake said quietly, "I think you might be right about humans being special." The child beamed up at him, completely unaware that he had just changed the course of history. The silence in the corridor stretched for several long seconds after Danny and Captain Morrison finished their song. The alien delegates remained frozen in place, as if they were afraid to move or speak. Danny looked around at their audience, with the fearless curiosity of a 3-year-old, waving cheerfully at the strange beings who had gathered to listen. "Hello," Danny called out to the Veltar at the end of the corridor. "Did you like our song?" The tall, blue-skinned alien tilted, its oversized head even further, studying the small human with obvious fascination. It didn't answer, but it also didn't leave. Jake heard footsteps approaching from behind them. He turned to see Dr. Lisa Warren hurrying down the corridor, her face showing a mixture of relief and concern. "Danny, there you are," she said slightly, "out of breath. Your mother has been looking everywhere for you." She noticed the assembled aliens, and her expression changed to one of surprise. "Captain, what's happening here?" Before Jake could answer, Danny piped up. "We were singing, Dr. Lisa. Captain Jake knows Amazing Grace too. Do you want to sing with us?" Lisa looked at Jake with confusion. The captain nodded toward their audience of alien observers. "Danny decided to share some human music," he said quietly. "It seems to have attracted some attention." More humans began to appear in the corridor. Word had spread somehow that something unusual was happening in the civilian quarters. Ensign Kate Brown arrived first, followed by Lieutenant Ben Parker and several other crew members from the Horizon's Edge. They saw the aliens watching and immediately became tense, unsure of what they had walked into. "It's all right," Jake said. To his crew, "Danny was just singing." "Singing?" Ben Parker looked around at the aliens, who were still maintaining their silent vigil. "Captain, what exactly is going on?" Danny answered for him. "We're sharing music. Mom says music makes everyone happy." He looked up at the growing crowd of humans. "Do you all know Amazing Grace? We could all sing together." The crew members exchanged uncertain glances. They were trained military personnel, not a choir. But there was something about the child's enthusiasm that was hard to resist. Lisa Warren was the first to speak up. "I know that song," she said softly. "My grandmother used to sing it." "Mine too," added Kate Brown. "It's a very old song." Danny clapped his hands together with delight. "See? All humans know the good songs. Let's sing it again, but louder this time so everyone can hear." Jake looked around at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for his lead. The alien delegates were still there, still listening. He made a decision that would change everything. "All right, Danny, let's sing it together." This time, when Danny began the familiar melody, he wasn't alone. Jake joined in immediately, his voice strong and confident. Lisa added her clear soprano harmony. Kate Brown hummed along softly, and Ben Parker found himself remembering the words his own grandmother had taught him years ago. "Amazing Grace. How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me." More voices joined with each word. The corridor began to fill with humans as news of the impromptu concert spread. Engineers from the ship's lower decks appeared, followed by medical staff and support personnel. They didn't all know the words, but they hummed along or simply listened with obvious pride. "I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see." The alien audience was growing too. More Veltar had arrived, their tall forms creating a silent wall of blue-skinned observers. The Zephyrians floated overhead, their wings catching the corridor lights and casting moving shadows on the walls. Aquari delegates emerged from their quarters, their large eyes reflecting something that might have been wonder. Amy Chun appeared at the back of the human crowd, looking for her son. When she saw Danny standing in the center of the group, leading the singing with his pure 3-year-old voice, her face filled with a mixture of pride and amazement. "'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved." The humans were no longer a formal military crew. They had become something else entirely, a community united by shared heritage and common purpose. Their voices blended, together in ways that training couldn't teach. Some sang the melody, others found harmony lines, and a few simply hummed along. Jake noticed that the aliens were moving closer. The Veltar who had first stopped to listen was now only a few feet away. Its large eyes were fixed on Danny, but there was something different in its expression. The cold, analytical look had been replaced by something warmer. "How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed." A new voice joined the chorus, and Jake nearly stopped singing in surprise. It was Dr. Warren's assistant, Maria Santos, who had been working in the station's medical bay. She had heard the singing from 3 corridors away and had come to investigate. Behind her came more humans, families of crew members, civilians who worked on the station, even some diplomats. From Earth's embassy, through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. The corridor was now packed with humans, all singing together. Danny stood at the center of it all, his small voice somehow carrying above the rest. He sang with complete confidence, as if he had been performing for alien audiences his entire short life. Looked around at the alien delegates and realized that their number had grown as well. Crystalline Etherians had emerged from their energy chambers, their forms glowing softly in the dim corridor lighting. Even some Krogan had abandoned their posts to listen, their massive forms creating an imposing backdrop to the scene. "'Tis grace has brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home." The most surprising addition to their audience was a group of beings Jake didn't recognize. They were small and quick, with silver skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. They must have been from one of the species he hadn't met yet. Drawn by the unusual sounds echoing through the station dot as the song continued, Jake began to notice something remarkable happening. The aliens weren't just listening anymore. Some were swaying slightly, their bodies moving in time with the music. The Zephyrians, who prided themselves on their artistic superiority, were studying the humans with what looked like genuine interest. We've been there 10,000 years, bright, shining as the sun." Danny's voice rose higher on the final verse, filled with the pure joy that only a child could bring to music. The other humans followed his lead, their voices growing stronger and more confident. They were no longer embarrassed or uncertain. They were sharing something precious, something that belonged to all of humanity. "We've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun." As the last note faded away, the corridor fell. Silent once again, but this time the silence felt different. It wasn't the cold, judgmental quiet of the council chambers. It was the respectful quiet that followed something beautiful. Danny looked around at all the faces, human and alien alike, and smiled his biggest smile. "That was the best singing ever," he announced. "Thank you for singing with me." The spell was broken, but not in a bad way. Humans began talking quietly among themselves, and some of the aliens started to move closer, as if they wanted to ask questions, but weren't sure how to begin. Jake realized that something fundamental had changed in the last few minutes. For the first time since arriving at the station, the aliens were looking at humans with something other than suspicion or dismissal. They were looking at them with curiosity, and maybe even respect. The silence that followed the song felt different from any quiet Jake had experienced before. It wasn't the empty silence of space or the tense silence of a battlefield. This was the kind of silence that came after something important had happened. When everyone needed a moment to understand what they had just witnessed. Danny stood in the center of the crowd, looking up at all the faces around him with bright, curious eyes. He seemed completely unaware that he had just done something remarkable. To him, singing was as natural as breathing, as simple as saying hello. The first alien to move was the Veltar, who had been listening from the beginning. The tall, blue-skinned being took a careful step forward, its forearms moving in what Jake recognized as a gesture of respect from the cultural briefings. "Small human," the Veltar said, its musical voice carrying clearly in the quiet corridor. "That sound pattern you created. It follows mathematical principles I did not expect from their species." Danny tilted his head, not understanding the complex words, but recognizing that he was being spoken to. "It's just a song," he said simply. "Do you like songs?" The Veltar's large eyes blinked slowly. "I am Ambassador Kethmer. I study patterns and logic. Your song contains mathematical relationships that are ... pleasing. The intervals between sounds create harmony through numerical precision." Dr. Lisa Warren stepped forward, her scientist mind immediately grasping what the alien was saying. "You're talking about musical theory. The mathematical ratios that make certain combinations of notes sound good together." Kethmer turned his attention to Lisa. "Yes, but your species accomplishes this intuitively, without calculation." The small human did not compute the proper ratios. He simply ... knew them. "All humans can do that," Danny said matter-of-factly. "Mom says it's because music lives in our hearts, not in our heads." One of the floating Zephyrians descended from the ceiling, her gossamer wings catching the light as she moved. Her skin shifted through shades of silver and gold as she spoke, colors flowing across her features like liquid metal. I am cultural. Minister Lyrish, she said, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. My people have studied the arts for 10,000 years. We believed we had achieved the highest forms of aesthetic expression. She paused, studying Danny with intense interest. Yet this child creates something that moves me in ways I cannot explain. Danny looked up at the beautiful alien with wonder. You're really pretty, he said honestly. Do you know any songs? Lyrish's colors shifted to deeper purples and blues. We have compositions of great complexity, created by our finest artists over centuries of refinement. But what you did, there was something else in it, something we have never achieved. What do you mean? Asked Amy Chun, who had pushed through the crowd to stand near her son. Emotion, said a new voice. An Aquari delegate had joined the conversation, its large, dark eyes reflecting the corridor lights. I am Healer Mordun. My people are telepathic. We sense the feelings of other beings. The alien looked directly at Danny. When you sang, little one, I felt something I have never experienced from another species. Jake found himself speaking. What did you feel? Pure joy, Mordun replied. No calculation, no performance, no desire to impress. Simply happiness in the act of creation itself. And something more, a connection to something larger than yourself. Danny nodded enthusiastically. The song makes me think of my grandma. She's not here anymore, but when I sing her song, it feels like she's listening. The Aquari's eyes widened. You use music to maintain bonds across time and space. To connect with those who are absent. This is a form of telepathy we never considered. More aliens had gathered during the conversation. The small, silver-skinned beings Jake had noticed earlier moved closer, their quick movements creating a soft rustling sound. One of them spoke in a voice like tinkling bells. We are the Resonari. Sound is sacred to us. We build our entire civilization around acoustic harmony. The being paused, tilting its head in a very human-like gesture. Your music creates resonance. Patterns that should not be possible with organic vocal cords. How do you achieve such precision? Ben Parker laughed softly. We don't try to achieve precision. We just sing what feels right. What feels right, repeated the Resonari. You use emotion as a guide to mathematical perfection. Remarkable. Even the imposing Krogan had moved closer to the group. Commander. Vekvar, who had dismissed humans as weak during the council session, now studied them with new interest. Your warriors sing? He asked, his deep voice rumbling through the corridor. All humans sing, replied Kate Brown. Soldiers sing marching. Songs. Workers sing while they labor. Children sing lullabies. It's part of who we are. Vekvar's scarred face showed something that might have been confusion. But singing serves no tactical purpose. It does not make you stronger or faster. Danny looked up at the massive alien. Warrior with no fear at all. Singing makes you feel better when you're scared. And when lots of people sing together, nobody feels alone. The Krogan stared down at the small human for a long moment. You use music as a weapon against fear? I guess so, Danny said, though he clearly didn't understand why that was important. Mom sings to me when I have bad dreams, and then I'm not scared anymore. Vekvar nodded slowly. This is practical. To remove fear from your warriors without drugs or technology. Only with sound. The crystalline Etherian who had been observing from the back of the group suddenly pulsed with bright light. When it spoke, its voice sounded like breaking glass, but somehow musical. I am Sage Quellandra. We Etherians seek understanding of the universe's deeper meanings. Your song contains spiritual resonance we did not expect from a species we judged as materialistic. Lisa Warren found herself becoming the spokesperson for humanity. Music has always been tied to spirituality for humans. We sing in our places of worship, at important ceremonies, when we're seeking comfort or meaning. The child sang of grace, Quelandra observed, a concept of unearned forgiveness and love. This suggests spiritual sophistication beyond what your technology level would indicate. Danny was starting to look tired from all the attention, but he perked up at the mention of grace. Grace means God loves us even when we make mistakes. Grandma said it's the most important thing to remember. The Etherian's crystal form pulsed brighter. A 3-year-old human understands concepts that some species never grasp. Fascinating. Jake looked around at the gathering of aliens, all focused on his people with new interest and respect. Less than an hour ago, these same beings had dismissed humanity as primitive and worthless. Now they were asking questions, trying to understand what they had witnessed. Ambassador Kethmer spoke again, his mathematical mind still processing what he had learned. Your species has developed something unique. You combine mathematical precision with emotional expression, creating patterns that satisfy both logic and feeling simultaneously. And you do it naturally, added Lyrish, her color shifting to warm golds, without training or conscious effort. It is simply part of your nature. Healer Morden's large eyes reflected deep thought. Music appears to be how humans process complex emotions and maintain social bonds. It serves multiple functions simultaneously: mathematical, emotional, spiritual, and social. Annie yawned, the excitement of the day finally catching up with him. Amy Chun stepped forward to scoop up her son. I think someone needs a nap, she said gently. But I want to sing more songs, Danny protested sleepily. There are so many pretty people here who haven't heard Amazing Grace yet. As Amy carried her son away, the aliens watched them go with expressions of newfound respect. The small human who had started as a curious child asking about a song had become something much more important, a bridge between species, a teacher who had shown them something beautiful about humanity they had never expected to find. Jake realized that everything had changed. The aliens were no longer looking at humans as primitives to be dismissed. They were looking at them as equals, as beings with something valuable to offer the galaxy. And it had all started with a 3-year-old who just wanted to share his favorite song. After Amy Chun carried Danny away for his nap, the corridor remained full of humans and aliens who seemed reluctant to leave. The moment had created something new, a bridge between species that hadn't existed an hour before. Jake watched as small groups began to form, aliens and humans talking together in ways that would have been impossible during the formal council sessions. Ambassador Kethmer approached Dr. Lisa Warren, his forearms moving in what Jake was learning to recognize as gestures of curiosity rather than dismissal. Dr. Warren, Eveltar said, I must understand more about this phenomenon. How does your species learn these mathematical sound patterns without formal education? Lisa smiled, finding herself genuinely excited to discuss something positive about humanity for the first time since arriving at the station. We call it music, Ambassador. Human children learn songs before they can read or write. Mothers sing to babies. Families sing together. We pass songs down through generations. But how do you maintain accuracy across generations without written notation? We don't always maintain perfect accuracy, Lisa admitted. Songs change as they pass from person to person. That's part of what makes them special. Each family, each community, adds something of themselves to the music. Kethmer's large head tilted as he processed this information. So your music evolves naturally, like a living organism. It adapts to new circumstances while preserving essential elements. Exactly. Amazing Grace, the song Danny sang, is hundreds of years old. But every person who sings it brings something of their own experience to it. Cultural Minister Lyrish floated closer, her gossamer wings creating gentle air currents. This explains what I sensed, but could not identify. Your music carries the emotional imprint of countless individuals. It is not just art, it is history. Ben Parker overheard the conversation and joined in. My grandfather used to say that songs were like time machines. When you sing an old song, you're connected to everyone who ever sang it before you. Remarkable, Lyresh murmured, her skin shifting to thoughtful silver tones. My people spend centuries perfecting individual compositions. We seek artistic purity through isolation and refinement. But you achieve depth through shared experience and collective memory. Commander Thekvar had been listening to another group of humans describing military songs and work chants. The massive Krogan warrior approached Jake with what might have been respect in his bearing. Captain Morrison, your people use music in combat situations? Jake nodded. Soldiers have always sung. Marching songs help keep troops in step and maintain morale. Battle songs give courage. Memorial songs honor the fallen. And these songs serve practical purposes? Very practical. Music helps people work together, stay focused, and cope with stress. A crew that sings together usually works better as a team. Thekvar's scarred face showed deep consideration. We Krogan value only strength and tactical advantage. But what? You describe ... unity through shared sound patterns. This could be considered a form of strength. Ensign Kate Brown, who had been quiet during most of the exchange, suddenly spoke up. Commander, would you like to hear a work song? Something humans sing when we're doing difficult tasks together? The Krogan looked surprised by the offer, but nodded slowly. Kate began a simple shanty. The kind sailors had sung for centuries, while hauling ropes and raising sails. Other crew members immediately joined in, their voices finding the rhythm that made hard work easier. Heave away, my Johnny. Heave away. Heave away, my Johnny boy. The aliens watched with fascination as the humans naturally fell into the rhythm of the song. Even without any actual work to do, their bodies moved in sync, demonstrating how music could coordinate group effort. The song creates unified action, Thekvar observed. Your warriors move as one through shared rhythm. It's not just warriors, explained Amy Chun, who had returned after settling Danny for his nap. Engineers sing while working on complex repairs. It helps us stay coordinated and focused. Healer Mordun, the Aquari telepath, had been quiet throughout the exchanges, but now he moved closer to the group. There is something else I must share. When you sang together, I sensed a phenomenon I have never encountered. What kind of phenomenon? Jake asked. Emotional resonance across multiple minds simultaneously. Your music creates a temporary telepathic-like connection between individuals. You share feelings and thoughts without conscious awareness of doing so. Lisa Warren leaned forward with scientific interest. Are you saying music makes humans temporarily telepathic? In a crude sense, yes. When you sing together, your emotional states synchronize. You become, for a brief time, parts of a larger collective consciousness. The small Resonari delegate, who had been hovering at the edge of the conversation, suddenly chimed in with its bell-like voice. This explains the acoustic anomalies we detected. Human vocal cords should not be able to achieve such precise harmony without technological assistance. But if you are unconsciously sharing mental states, we adjust to each other automatically. Finished Kate Brown. When I hear someone singing off-key, I naturally try to help them find the right note. Incredible, whispered the Resonari. You have developed biological telepathy through sound waves. Sage Colandra, the crystalline Etherian, pulsed with bright light as it spoke. This changes our understanding of your species entirely. We judged you as spiritually primitive because you lack formal philosophical training. But your music serves the same function as our deepest meditative practices. How so? Asked Jake. Transcendence of individual consciousness, through unity with something greater. Connection across time and space. Processing of complex emotional and spiritual concepts through non-verbal means. You achieve through instinctive practice what we require decades of study to accomplish. Amy Chun smiled at the various aliens who had gathered around them. We just call it singing together. It's one of the things that makes us human. But that is precisely the point, said Ambassador Kethmer. You treat this remarkable ability as commonplace. You do not recognize how extraordinary it is, because for you, it simply is. Lyrish's colors shifted to warm, admiring golds. We Zephyrians have spent millennia trying to create art that could unite different individuals in shared experience. You accomplish this naturally, effortlessly, even unconsciously. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a new figure. Sub-Ambassador Kreloth, the Veltar who had first escorted the humans to the council chambers. His usual cold demeanor seemed changed as he approached the group. Captain Morrison, the council has requested an immediate return to session. There has been significant discussion among the delegates following reports of what occurred here. Jake felt his stomach tighten. Had their impromptu concert somehow made things worse? What kind of discussion? The kind of discussion that changes minds, Captain. The delegates are eager to hear more about human cultural practices. As the groups began to disperse, preparing to return to the formal diplomatic setting, Jake realized that something fundamental had shifted. The aliens were no longer looking at humans as potentially dangerous primitives who needed to be kept at a safe distance. They were looking at them as teachers, as a species with knowledge and abilities that could enrich the entire galactic community. Amy. Chun paused as she passed Jake. Captain, I should probably wake Danny up. Something tells me the council might want to hear from our little ambassador again. Jake nodded, still amazed at how much had changed because a 3-year-old boy had simply wanted to share his favorite song. Amy, I think you're right. I think they're going to want to hear a lot more from all of us. As they walked back toward the council chambers, Jake couldn't help but smile. Humanity's first contact with galactic civilization was about to take a very different turn than anyone had expected, and it was all because Danny Chun had asked if he knew Amazing Grace. The council chamber felt completely different when Jake and his team returned. The same vast space that had seemed cold and unwelcoming just hours before now buzzed with excited conversation. Delegates from all 12 species were talking animatedly, among themselves, their voices creating a complex symphony of different languages and communication methods. Jake noticed that the seating arrangement had changed too. Instead of the rigid formal positions they had occupied during the morning session, many of the delegates had moved closer to the central platform where the humans would stand. Some had even left their species-specific sections entirely, clustering together in mixed groups that would have been unthinkable earlier. Amy Chun walked beside Jake, carrying a sleepy Danny, who had just woken up from his nap. The 3-year-old rubbed his eyes and looked around at the enormous chamber with mild interest, as if vast alien assemblies were perfectly normal parts of his day. Wow, this place is really big, Danny said, his voice echoing slightly in the huge space. Are we going to sing here too? Several nearby delegates turned at the sound of his voice, and Jake was amazed to see something that looked like smiles on alien faces that had shown only cold disapproval hours before. Sub-Ambassador Kreloth approached them as they took their positions on the central platform. Captain Morrison, the council is eager to reconvene. The reports of your cultural demonstration have created considerable interest. Reports? Jake asked. Word travels quickly on a station this size? Kreloth replied. Every delegate has heard about the small human singer and the remarkable display of your species' abilities. The chamber fell silent as the session was called to order, but it was a different kind of silence than before. Instead of the cold, judgmental quiet of the morning, This felt expectant, hopeful. The same voice that had announced humanity's petition hours earlier now echoed through the chamber, but the tone seemed warmer somehow. The Coalition Council recognizes the continuation of proceedings regarding the human petition for membership. Ambassador Kefmer was the first to speak, rising from his position among the Veltar delegation. Honored Council, this afternoon's events have provided new information that significantly impacts our evaluation of the human species. What information? Asked the lead Zephyrian delegate, though Jake noticed that Cultural Minister Lyresh was nodding approvingly. Humans possess a form of mathematics-based communication that creates temporary telepathic-like connections between individuals. They achieve complex harmonic relationships through intuitive calculation. Most remarkably, they teach these abilities to their offspring before formal education begins. Danny looked up at his mother with confusion. What's he talking about? Mom? Amy smiled down at her son. He's talking about singing, sweetie. Oh, Danny said, as if that explained everything. Everyone can sing. His innocent comment carried clearly through the chamber's excellent acoustics, and Jake heard what sounded like chuckles from several of the alien delegations. Healer Mordon rose from the Aquari section. A child speaks truth without realizing its significance. Humans do not consider their remarkable abilities unusual because these abilities are universal among their species. Cultural Minister Lyresh floated up from her position, her skin shimmering with excited golden hues. Honorable Council, I have studied the arts for centuries. What I witnessed today surpasses achievements that our greatest artists required decades to accomplish. And humans do this naturally, as part of their basic nature. Commander Vikvar's deep voice rumbled through the chamber. The humans have weaponized harmony for practical military and social purposes. They use coordinated sound patterns to maintain unit cohesion and boost morale. This demonstrates tactical thinking beyond their apparent technology level. Jake felt like he should say something, but he wasn't sure what. Everything the aliens were saying was true, but they were talking about singing as if it was some kind of advanced technology, instead of just a normal part of being human. Danny solved his dilemma by tugging on his mother's uniform. Mom, I'm thirsty, Amy whispered back. We'll get you some water after the meeting, okay? But Danny had noticed something else. He pointed toward the Resonari delegation with excitement. Look, Mom, the pretty silver people are here. Hi, silver people. The small Resonari delegate who had spoken to them earlier chimed a response that sounded like wind chimes. Greetings, small singer. We have told the council about your acoustic achievements. I just sang Amazing Grace, Danny said matter-of-factly. Do you want to hear it again? Before anyone could respond, Danny began to sing. His clear, pure voice filled the enormous chamber, carrying the familiar melody to every corner of the vast space. Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Delegates who had been moving around the chamber froze in place. Even the ambient hum of the stations. Systems seemed to quiet, as if the technology itself was listening. Jake realized he had a choice. He could try to stop Danny, explaining that this wasn't the time or place for impromptu concerts. Or he could trust that a 3-year-old boy somehow understood something that trained diplomats had missed. He chose to trust Danny. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. Jake's voice joined his young friends, just as it had in the corridor hours earlier. Then Dr. Lisa Warren added her harmony, followed by the other human crew members. Within moments, the entire human delegation was singing together in the center of the galaxy's most important political chamber. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. Jake watched the alien delegates as they sang. The same transformation he had witnessed in the corridor was happening again, but on a much larger scale. Hundreds of alien beings from 12 different species were experiencing human music for the first time, and their reactions were unmistakable. The mathematical Vel-Tar swayed slightly, their large heads moving in time with the rhythm. The artistic Zephyrians had changed to colors Jake had never seen before, deep purples and golds that seemed to pulse with the melody. Even the warrior-like Krogan stood at attention, showing the kind of respect usually reserved for fallen heroes. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. As they sang, Jake realized that Danny had done it again. Without any understanding of politics or diplomacy, the child had cut straight to the heart of what mattered. He had shown the aliens not what humans could argue or negotiate, but what humans could be. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. The song was building to its climax, and Jake could feel something changing in the chamber. The aliens weren't just listening anymore. Some were trying to hum along, their different vocal mechanisms creating strange but beautiful harmonies with the human voices. "'Tis grace has brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home." Danny's voice soared on the final verse, filled with the pure joy that had started everything. The other humans followed his lead, their voices blending together in the kind of perfect harmony that only came from shared emotion and common purpose. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. As the last note faded away, the chamber remained silent for several long moments. Then, slowly, something unprecedented happened. The alien delegates began to applaud, each species using their own methods of showing approval. The Vel-Tar clicked, their four hands together in complex rhythms. The Zephyrians created shimmering light displays with their wings. The Resonari chimed like an orchestra of bells. Danny looked around at all the noise and light with delight. "They liked it," he announced unnecessarily. The lead delegate's voice echoed through the chamber, but now it carried warmth and welcome. "The Coalition Council calls for an immediate vote on the human petition for membership." Jake held his breath. As the votes were tallied, species after species voted in favor, their reasons ranging from Vel-Tar appreciation for human mathematical intuition to Zephyrian respect for emotional artistic expression to Krogan admiration for practical harmony. Techniques. When the final tally was announced, unanimous approval. Danny clapped his hands with happiness. "Does this mean we can stay and sing more songs?" he asked. Ambassador Kethmer rose to answer him directly. "Small human singer, this means your people are welcome to share their songs with the entire galaxy." As the chamber erupted in celebration, Jake knelt down beside Danny. "Thank you, Danny. You just helped humanity join the galactic community." Danny looked confused. "I just sang Amazing Grace, Grandma's song." "I know," Jake said, smiling. And that made all the difference. Later, as they prepared to return to Earth with the news of humanity's acceptance, Jake found Danny playing quietly in the ship's common area. The child had no idea that he had just changed the course of history, that his simple song had opened the galaxy to human exploration and friendship. "Hey, Danny," Jake said, sitting down beside him. "Do you know any other songs?" Danny's face lit up with excitement. "Oh yes, Captain Jake. I know lots of songs. Do you want to learn them?" Jake smiled, thinking about all the alien friends humanity had just made, all the species eager to learn more about human culture and music. "Yes, Danny,